So recapping real quick, your first hint is how do I get and analyze the 60% coverage from one floor plate to another, right? So you're going to need to isolate this coincident area, right? The area in the center. That's this right here. So you can do that under intersect and physical, and it should work with brep in most cases. There may be some problems if you have edges that are perfectly aligned, but anyway, brep is just going to take a surface and another surface, and it's going to return the intersection curves around that profile. From that, you can just plug, sorry, you should be able to just plug your surface in, and that creates that area right there. And with that, you should all know how to calculate the 60% difference, okay, the 60% coverage. Okay, so you've got your rules up there, and then I'll jump back into this for a couple more hints in a moment. All right, so tip number 2, right? You guys are at this point, those of you who have gotten to the point where you're starting to try and figure out the colorization, right? You're on the right track. It's almost exactly the same thing as we did on Tuesday. The only difference is, on Tuesday, all we tested for was whether or not it was larger than or smaller than. And we only had 2 potential options. In this case, we have an acceptable range. Therefore, we have 3 potential results. We have failing low, we have passing in the mid-range, and then we have failing high. So we need to create basically a workflow that's going to pass the surface. It's going to dispatch it either to fail high, or then furthermore test it to pass mid or fail low. Okay, so it's kind of a duplication of what we did on Tuesday, and I'm not going to make all the connections yet. I'll string it all together later. But what I do want to show you is that dispatch, right here, dispatch can actually be strung together to dispatch for our fail high, and then pass our fail, or our pass. Yeah, let me just explain it when I string them together. So think of it this way, right? You have your A list, which passes, or fails rather, or I'm sorry, passes. Let me start over. Okay, so A is a passing, right? Anything that's true is going to pass through the A output. Anything that's false is going to pass through the B output. So therefore, if your surface fails high, you're going to want this to pass out the B output. Then what you know is that you only need to test for 2 more things. You need to test for your passing mid-range or your failing low range, which means if it passes that it is below our high ceiling, we can pass it into this dispatch, which is going to give us a passing mid-range and a failing low range. So I'll give you the notes on these right now. This one is failing high. This one is, I'm just going to say passing. And this one is failing low. Okay? So I'll leave it to you now to connect the dots and figure out how to use your testing operators, meaning your larger than and smaller than, and connect your areas to that. Okay? So there are some connections that need to be made between this and that. What questions do you have? Yeah. Okay. Have at it. Okay, guys, I'm going to give you tip number 3, which is starting to connect the dots. Okay, and once I connect the dots on this, I'm really hoping you'll be able to figure out the second half of this within a reasonable timeline. So what I mentioned was we are using these 2 dispatches to first test if a condition is true or false. And then if it's false, or rather in this case if it's true, then you need to test if it is remaining true or false in the second level of testing. Okay, so all of this has to do with whether or not something is larger than or smaller than a given value. So we have two tests that we're trying to test for. We have the coverage of the two floor plates over top of one another, and we have the square footage of the two floor plans, or floor plates. So I think the easier one to start with is the floor plates. So I'm going to start with that. And it's as easy as adding the two areas together. So I'm going to go under Math and Operators and add in an A plus B. And then I'm going to go into Surface and Analysis, and I'm going to get two area components. So these are my two floor plates. And this surface and that surface are just going to get plugged in from A to A and A to B. And that gives you, let me drop a panel in here. You don't need the panel, I'm just showing you. It gives you your combined square footage.
Too much.
Yeah, mine's way, way too big. Now, I already kind of know that it's too big. I don't need to fix that yet. The point here is I'm going to have this graphic element that's going to tell me whether or not it's correct or incorrect. So I'm going to start off by setting up those boundaries. And you just need to think about the logic of how you want to structure it. Okay, so I'll drop a panel in for my two boundaries, one of which is 5,800 square feet, so I'll just do 5,800. And then I'm going to do another one for 5,400. Okay, so test number one. I set my dispatch up so that false is my failing high. So that means in order for it to fail above 5,800, I need to test if it's smaller than 5,800. Do you guys get that? Because if I use larger than, then the A output is going to be positive. Right? You just need to think about the Boolean, split. So I'll show you and you'll get it. But so I'll go to Math and Operators and smaller than. And this is the value I'm testing. So I'm going to put that into A. And the number I'm going to test it against is 5,800. So this is saying if the first number, 9,800 square feet, is smaller than 5,800 square feet, then create an either true or false Boolean operator, and in this case it's false, because it is in fact larger than. So I'm going to do smaller than or equal to, and I'm going to put that into the dispatch pattern. Okay, the pattern is Boolean. It's either going to go to A or it's going to go to B. If it's true, it goes to A. If it's false, it goes to B. In this case, we have failed, and we failed on the high end. Therefore, the surface, or the surfaces, both of these floor plans, when I plug them both into L, fix this up a little bit so it's a little cleaner. When I plug them both into L, they both get rendered, and the last step to show it correctly failing high is to go into Params, Input, and grab my color swatch, plug that in, and I'm going to make it a failing color. In this case, I'm going to do orange. You guys get that? Yeah? No? So all I added in this was this right here, just the smaller than. Well, actually, I mean, I added this, but I think that's kind of a given, right? You need to add the two together to get the number. Okay, so I'm going to just complete the thought here and then give you guys a moment to catch up before I give you any more material. But that's only one level. The next level is what we're left with down here. We need to figure out what we're going to do to create a passing and a failing low. So before I even get started, I'm going to apply my swatches. So failing low is also going to be orange, and passing I'm going to make green. Now I need to create the condition for passing, right? So 5,400 is my lower limit. If my square footage is above 5,400, then it is passing, right? And so I want passing to be true, which is A, and that's going to render it green. So I need to test to see if my square footage is larger than 5,400. Is that making sense? So I'm going to go to Math, Operators, Larger Than. And I'm going to test 5,400. Whoop, I did that backwards. Sorry. I'm going to test the square footage of my floor plates to see if it's larger than 5,400. And in this case, it is in fact larger than 5,400. So I'm going to plug that in down here. Now why didn't it render it green? Because it is larger than 5,400. Why didn't it do it? Anybody? Anybody? Right, because it is still greater than 5,800. If you follow these orange strings back, what they're telling you is that no information is flowing there. This cuts the cord. Data will not be calculated beyond that. So if there's nothing passing through the L for this dispatch, there's nothing to render true. And so the false for the 5,800 takes precedence. So now it really is just a matter of editing my floor plates in order to get them to work. So I'll go through that process right now. I'll select this one, and I'll turn my edit points on and just start pulling it. Pull that one there. I'll turn my edit points on here. Pull that one down. In fact, something that might be useful is to test whether, okay, so I changed my low color, my failing low, and so now I just realized I'm actually too low now. So I'll kind of keep adjusting till you get it right. There we go. Okay, so just by adjusting it on the page, I can test whether or not it's within the acceptable range. What questions do you have? Notice how now it has changed and my orange line is going to the failing high pathway. And now the information is flowing down to my failing or my passing pathway. So if there are no questions, I'm going to stop this video, and I'm going to give you guys a bit of time to play around with this, get caught up, and give your other test a shot.